If you've never read a She-Hulk title before, or you just want to see her in a few other comics, then this is a video for you. Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. As seems to be the tradition for me Where to Start series, I'm going to kick this off with the first title that I read for this character, and when it comes to She-Hulk, I started with Dan Slott. And if we're being honest, after John Byrne, this was pretty much the most monumental title for this character. It's a very decent sized run, it was all collected in this one omnibus, but in the same breath, if you don't have that much time, you can just read the first 12 issues. Because then it got relaunched and renumbered, but those first 12 issues can still kind of stand on their own. And what I liked about this most is that it struck a great balance between Jennifer Walters being a superhero, but also her position as a lawyer. And when I was much younger, I was dumb enough to think that She-Hulk was just pretty much girl version of Hulk, but this was the run that made me realise that she is a completely different character who deserves to stand on her own 2 feet. Even if those 2 feet are more muscular than the entirety of my body. And in particular, if you know a lot about the Marvel Universe, especially what was going on around this time, then this would probably be my main recommendation, because you get a lot of cameo appearances from other superheroes and supervillains. And more than anything, it was just fun. Next up, and I already mentioned him, I might as well get the 2 biggest hitters out of the way, but I'm going to recommend The Sensational She-Hulk by John Byrne, because this is the run where She-Hulk really started to come into her own and solidify herself as a solo character. John Byrne was pretty much the reinvention guy during the 80s. He had She-Hulk, he had Superman, and he also had his work on the Fantastic Four. And this was all before he just decided to kind of retell the story of Spider-Man's origin and change pretty much nothing about it. But the reason why I'm going to recommend this is because it's where her personality formed, and a lot of those traits that you'd see in She-Hulk now began in this series, along with establishing the major figures within her rogues gallery and introducing the Grey She-Hulk and leaning into her ability to break the 4th wall. This might feel quite weirdy for a modern reader, but if you were growing up in the 80s and reading comics and you've taken a break since then, or you prefer something where you don't have to read the entirety of the thing to understand what's going on, then this would be the run that I'd recommend, because I've read a large majority of this and I think it's just got so much charm to it. It's clear that John Byrne loves this character. The art still holds up today. It doesn't really feel like you're reading an older comic, and I just think that this is the perfect introduction into She-Hulk, because this was pretty much the major introduction into She-Hulk. Now, I'm already going to throw a bit of a controversial pick into the mix, because I like to give as many different options as possible, which is why I'm going to recommend World War Hulk. I don't know what type of comic you might like, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach, but maybe you like event comics, or maybe you're a massive fan of the Hulk, and if you're not, then I've already done a Where to Start on him. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing to be introduced into a character that isn't exactly their series, and World War Hulk is an option if you are looking to start reading Jennifer Walters, because this was happening at the time of the Dan Slott run, so the character is the same out of that series, and then you could probably jump into that one if you liked her in World War Hulk. But if this does sound like a book that wouldn't make you angry, then why not check it out and just see if you enjoy it, because she did feature quite a lot in this, even if she isn't the central character. With any kind of Hulk title, there's always going to be members of the Hulk family that will appear in it, so if you like company-wide events, you don't mind a bit of a silly concept, and you like the John Romita Jr. art, and you want to learn about Jennifer Walters without going into one of her ongoing series that maybe you just don't have the time for, or you don't feel like you have the knowledge for, then give this a go. I know that this isn't going to be the title recommendation for everybody, but it might be the one for you. When I do me Where to Start, I normally try not to recommend the very first series for a character, mostly because I feel like it was written so long ago that a modern reader starting today wouldn't really be able to enjoy it. But in preparation for this video, I did check out a few of the Savage She-Hulk, which was her first series, and I do think that this is pretty accessible to a modern reader. I did only manage to check this out thanks to the Marvel Unlimited app, which I've already done a review of that you might want to check out. And if you were to go back and read some of the first X-Men series or the first Batman titles, you might have a difficult time enjoying it. Whereas the Savage She-Hulk still has a lot to offer. And I'm putting this on the list because it's great if you just want to read a couple of issues and then maybe have a break and read something else and come back and pick this up. It's not a run where it requires you to read absolutely everything in one sitting, or that you're going to have a problem jumping back into it if you leave it for a couple of weeks or months. Or if you're as dumb as me, you might go a day without reading the title and then you've forgotten what's happened. And it might just be the case that the 80s was the type of storytelling that you like, and you really want to go back to the very beginning and see how it started. So not that it needed it, but it's got me blessing, and you can now pick this up in an omnibus, which you can buy from the channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as as you like. Now, She-Hulk's a tricky one to do a where to start for, which is probably why there's going to be less entries in this video than there was for other characters. But I believe that just gives me a chance to really get specific with the recommendations that I'm giving you, and if you've watched any of this series before, you know that I love recommending a team book. So my next recommendation is going to be the Avengers. Pretty much a couple of years after she debuted, she already appeared in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, so you can see her featuring a handful of times in JLA Avengers, which I talked about in my George Perez Top 5 Notable Works. She was in the Mighty Avengers during the Bendis era, and even though I don't think it's the best Avengers book that's ever existed, the one that I'm mostly going to recommend is a recent run that was done by Jason Aaron. Now, this video isn't the greatest She-Hulk titles of all time, but the ones that I think are most accessible for new readers. And during Aaron's time writing this team, She-Hulk was a pivotal character from the first issue. And this is one of the best long-running team books that you can get that heavily features her. And it's a great way to get introduced into the modern She-Hulk because she has changed quite a bit over the years. So she is a bit more savage, that anger can take over her, and I think that features quite a lot in this book. The art's also great throughout. It's done by Ed McGuinness, who is also going to feature in this video, and you can also see how she works in a team dynamic because yes, in a solo series it is mostly about her, but if you know characters like Thor, Captain America, you can get a sense of her personality based on how she works with those other people. Because it might be the case that you wouldn't like a She-Hulk solo series, not everything works out for everyone, but in doing this you can still read a title that you might enjoy and have a good time with and figure out if you like Jennifer Walters. Now, the next book that I'm going to put on this list is a very loose recommendation because I feel like whichever way I sway with this, I'm going to either be somebody who hates women or I'm just going to be a simp, because it's another team book that's actually led by She-Hulk, and that is A-Force. I've only read the 5-issue miniseries and it was marketed as decidedly feminist, and you're going to have one of two reactions when you hear that phrase. Either you think that sounds great and something that you want to read, in which case I'd recommend picking this up, and if you didn't think that and you think it's pandering or anything like that, then I'd just recommend trying one of the other series. And let's be honest, in today's society there's not likely to be a third reaction, but if you did want an Avengers team that mostly features She-Hulk along with a lot of other female heroes and not need to read a lot of issues to enjoy it, then this would be the one that would tick those boxes for you. Next up, I'm recommending the Hulk run from 2016. It was written by Mariko Tamaki, and don't let the title deceive you because this is solely about Jennifer Walters, and I really enjoyed this despite the fact that it's often overlooked. It's about 17 or so issues long and it gives you a great different take on this character. It's easily accessible from Marvel Unlimited, but not that accessible if you wanted to trade paperbacks, and I like this because She-Hulk's more of a brute. It's more focusing on the vicious side of that character. It's pretty fun, it's quick to read, so if you were looking for a fresh start to this character, this would be one that I'd recommend looking into. Another shorter run that I'd recommend is She-Hulk by Peter David. Now, Peter David did take over after Dan Slott left, so you could pretty much read that run and then just continue on to this one, but I do also think it's a decent jumping on point that you should consider if you want a more action-packed series. David was the guy that brought the Hulk into the modern age, so it's only fair that he gets some time with Jennifer Walters, which kind of sounds like I'm accusing him of something. This is almost the polar opposite of some of the other runs that are going to be featured on this list because it completely gets rid of all the lawyer stuff. So if you know you don't want any of the courtroom drama and you just want to see She-Hulk battering people up, being a bounty hunter, being cool and having all these great action-packed moments, then yeah, this is probably going to be the one that you'd need to read most. You also get to see her going up against a lot of the Hulk's rogue gallery, so you get to see her expand her horizons. The art's pretty decent throughout as well, especially if you didn't like a lot of the Dan Slott stuff, and it did recently get released in an omnibus, so you can easily get your hands on this. But maybe you like the sound of She-Hulk balancing both a life as a superhero and also a lawyer, in which case there's probably no better recommendation for you than the run that was done by Charles Soule. He's a writer that I've actually read quite a lot of in the last couple of months, and he's got a completely different vibe from a lot of the other runs that I've recommended. And it may feel like a change of pace, especially if you don't want something that relies too heavy on the action. Maybe you've just come out of reading a lot of Hulk books where he's just Hulk smashing his way through everything, and you want something that gives you a different take. And I didn't know this when I reviewed his Daredevil title, but Soule actually has a lore background, and you can tell when you read this book. Not so much when you read his Darth Vader run though, there's not a lot of legality that goes into that. It's a lot more serious in tone, and it values a life as Jennifer Walters just as much, if not more than a life as She-Hulk. There's also a massive court case that dominates the majority of this series that also features another big character within the Marvel Universe. So for just a 12-issue run, this did attempt a lot, and it is getting a complete collection later on this year, and I can appreciate that this might not be a take on this character that a lot of people would want, but if you want a more grounded version of She-Hulk, then this would definitely be the one for you. If you haven't already hated me for some of the picks on this list, then you might after this one, because I'm gonna go with Hulk by Jeff Loeb. Now, I'm going to ask you a question and I hope that you answer it. Do you want a comic that's ridiculous, but damn good fun? If you answered yes, then this is the title that you need to read. Yep, it is a mainline Hulk book, but it's more about the Hulk family than it is about Bruce Banner. So Jennifer Walters does feature in this quite a bit, along with the introduction of the Red She-Hulk. You also get the inclusion of A-Force if you don't want to read that solo series, but you want to learn more about this team and how She-Hulk operates with them. And the majority of the art is done by Ed McGuinness, which speaks for itself, and I just think this is a phenomenal looking book. It's pretty much the equivalent of a summer blockbuster movie. Like if the people from Fast and Furious were tasked with doing a Hulk book, I genuinely think that this is the one that they'd make. I reviewed it a few years ago, and I do think it's better out the gate than it is in the finishing stretch. But if I was just getting into comics and I was throwing caution to the wind and I want to be entertained while seeing a plethora of Hulk characters, including She-Hulk, and not bothering too much about origin stories and just let me see how they operate, then I think that this would be the best route that I could go down. Next up, I'm recommending the current one that's been written by Rainbow Rowell. I've only been able to read the first issue, but if we're talking about modern She-Hulk jumping on points, then this has to be on the list. Because let's be honest, Marvel knows what they're doing. When the Doctor Strange film was coming out, there was a new Strange series. When Moon Knight had a Disney Plus show, there was a new ongoing. And it makes sense because if people are going to be introduced to She-Hulk through the Disney Plus show, then there might as well be a new series that they can just jump onto. Maybe you could just read the issues online and then catch up to where we're at now. And this takes place during a stint in Aaron's Avengers, and you don't really need to know what happened there. It does have a decent sense of humour. I feel like it's going to go down that fun, light-hearted approach. And for the last couple of years, we've mostly just had She-Hulk rather than Jennifer Walters, and it feels like this run is going to bring balance back to both parts of her life. It starts out with her finding her feet again, so it is a great jumping on point because you don't really need to know a lot of what gone on in the past because the past doesn't really matter to where she's at now. But if you're wondering if you could jump into the current run of She-Hulk, then yeah, you can. Special mention, I'm going to put this on here, but I am going to recommend the Disney Plus show. If you're wondering if there was any books that you needed to read before you can start watching this, then don't worry, you're probably going to be fine. You might need to watch all the movies that include the regular Hulk because some of his villains seem like they're going to appear in it, and also the Netflix shows from some of the rumours that I've been hearing. But Marvel understands that the majority of people don't know who She-Hulk is, so this series is going to be approached for people who maybe have never heard of the character. So don't worry if you do just want to watch the series. I haven't seen any of it, so I can't tell you if it's good or not, but it looks like they're aware of the CGI, so at least that might be fixed. And you've probably seen it over my shoulder for the majority of this video, but how could I do a where to start on She-Hulk without recommending Fantastic Four by John Byrne? Yep, he's featuring in this video again, but how could he not be? Because this was one of my first introductions to this character, and that was the same for a lot of people. The She-Hulk solo series didn't do as well as the Fantastic Four, so her being featured in this was a lot of people's exposure into who Jennifer Walters is. And as well, it's Byrne's first time with the character, which again kind of sounds like an accusation, but you can see that he understands why she's an interesting character, which then spins off into her own solo series. And yeah, it's kind of spoilers, but She-Hulk takes the place of the Thing in this run, but it never feels like she's just trying to fill his shoes, mostly because he doesn't wear them. This really influenced a lot of my opinions of this character, and it's the reason why I enjoy seeing her in other titles and also in her own solo series. And you also get to see more of Jennifer's personality developing and the relationships that she begins to build. If you don't know a lot about the character, but you've read the Fantastic Four before, or maybe you just want to see it in more of a sci-fi story, you could easily pick this up, get to know the character, and then jump into Byrne's solo series. That's what a lot of people did during the 80s when these titles were first coming out, so why would it not work now? But that's the video, and I haven't read everything that She-Hulk's been in, so if I've forgotten anything, leave it in the comment section below. But do me a massive favour so that this series can keep going, please share this where you can, but until next time, just make sure that you stay safe, and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you in the next video.